Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Quianna Canada, and today we are going to be discussing Mondale Robinson's public announcement of quitting TYT. That's right, Mondale Robinson decided to quit TYT, and we are going to get into that. But before we do, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember that your likes and your shares to this channel is very important. What it does is it pushes this video up in the algorithm. But because this video is not pushed up in the algorithm, does not mean that this video is not important. I must issue a disclaimer that currently I am, or not necessarily a disclaimer, but an announcement myself. If you've been following my story, you understand that I'm going through transnational repression. So, what's happening is that powerful groups who have information technology skills are actually suppressing my content, getting into my social media accounts. Now, I personally believe that these groups are connected to the Republic of Ireland and also connected to the United States of America. There is a cyber person named Maurice O'Sullivan, and of course, he is connected to the Republic of Ireland. And there is these alphabet agencies that are in. They want to suppress my speech because it is inconsistent with the narrative on race in the United States. And that is what we're going to be talking about also today. Okay, so let's get into it. So, if you haven't been following social media headlines, you probably don't know about what happened with Mondale Robinson. Now, Mondale Robinson, if you don't know who he is actually a mayor, and he provided some commentary. So he used to work for TYT as a contributor. He provided commentary on current events, and recently, a few days ago, he announced his retirement. That's just the easy way to say it, right? Okay, let's not be easy. He quit on live air. He quit on the Benjamin Dixon show. And Mondale Robinson went into some reasoning as to why he quit TYT. First, Mondale Robinson states that he is of the opinion that TYT is pandering to the right. So, if you don't already know that Mondale Robinson is on the left, he is a progressive. And so lately, TYT, so Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur have both been going to right-wing podcast and holding some difficult discussions, or maybe just I think in Mondale Robinson's view, these discussions that Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur is having on these right-wing podcasts, I think in his view, he believes that is very inconsistent with the progressive movement. So, as we know, Anna Kasparian went on the Glenn Beck show, and Cenk Uygur went on the PBD podcast, I believe it's called. And these are two right wing channels and podcasts that are very, I won't use the word aggressive, but hostile to progressive ideology and progressive politics. And so, in Mondale Robinson's view, he is like, okay, these people are very hostile to progressive ideology and the things that we stand for. And so he feels that what is happening now is that TYT is being very hypocritical in their advocacy for marginalized groups, especially those on the left. But let's go into this a little bit deeper. So, is it okay to have conversations with people that you disagree with? I would argue, yes, it is okay to have conversations with those you disagree with. I have conversations with people that I disagree with all the time, right? So, a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a classmate about the Israeli Palestine conflict. You know that I am in solidarity with the Jewish people, the Jewish community. It must be reiterated that my solidarity with the Jewish people and the Jewish community is not in solidarity with war. To reiterate, I am not in solidarity with war. I'm anti war. I don't think that any nation should be putting its citizens or other foreign nationals through war. And I feel that this is, it falls harder on women and children. And it really causes, a humanitarian crisis that is very difficult to come back from. And so, that being said, like I had a conversation with somebody who is pro-Palestinian, and although there are some things that I can understand, I totally disagree with that position. Um, I also have, when I was in the Republic of Ireland, I had some conversations with a man who was very far right and was able to have a decent discussion with very people on the far right. Although I'm not far right, although my beliefs are not far right, I'm able to actually sit down and have conversations with these people that I disagree with. But I don't think that that is what Mondale Robinson is upset about. I think Mondale Robinson is upset that what is happening is that he sees a shift in the perspective of TYT. So Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, they seem to actually agree with some of the um, political positions of the far right, which I think impacts people like Mondale Robinson and myself. And so Mondale Robinson argues that MAGA, so the MAGA cult, those within the MAGA cult are the same people that he believes is, well, he argues, he asserts, strongly that these are the people that have caused his family a lot of problems and have actually threatened his family. So Mondale Robinson, he goes in deeper and he states that, you know, for a period of time, like he couldn't get into his accounts, that he was locked out of his accounts, and he believed that that far right persons actually locked him out of his accounts. And although Mondale Robinson argues that he had to go to like the FBI and the FBI helped him get his accounts back, I would, I think I take so I think I take umbrage with this. I am in disagreement. What I believe, and maybe my belief, it doesn't really mean much here, but after evaluating the behavior of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I'm inclined to say that it was possibly the Federal Bureau of Investigation that locked Mondale Robinson out of his case. I'm pretty sure that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, it was connected to these groups that actually had access to his accounts. How the reason why I'm saying this is because the same thing is happening to me. There are uh, actors, non-state actors that have been getting into my social media accounts and have locked me out of my accounts with the acquiescence of the state. So with the acquiescence of the Republic of Ireland, with the acquiescence of the legal attaches abroad. And so I am of the opinion that this is actually happening to Mondale Robinson as well, is that Mondale Robinson is being locked out of his accounts, that probably non-state actors with cyber who have IT experience are actually being contracted by the state to lock him out of his account, kind of sow doubt in his mind about like who is actually doing this. And so what we see is that Mondale Robinson definitively states that the FBI helped him get back in his accounts. And of course, that is what will happen is that once the FBI or once these intelligence agencies skim everything in your account, look for whatever they're looking for to discredit you or looking for something to actually pin on you. If they find nothing, then what they'll do is they'll give that account back to you. And I think that that's exactly what has happened here. But if we are going to go back, let's refer back to the initial topic at hand, and that is Robinson's rift and with TYT. So he's drifting away from TYT. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not surprised that this has happened, that this relationship has severed. We are starting to see a big shift in politics in the United States, and people are starting to choose sides. Now, in a few videos that I uploaded a while back, and I might attach that video in my in the description of this video. But what I argued is that Black American, so within the Democratic Party, there has been a lot. So there has been various ideologies that have been merged together to, to make up one party, right? But lately, what we have seen is that there has been a conflict in belief systems and a conflict in ideologies within the Democratic Party, which ultimately resulted in the Democratic Party losing the election because of that inconsistency within this party. And so I'm not surprised that Mondale Robinson is now deciding to relinquish his employment with TYT, that there is diverging paths here because, ladies and gentlemen, we need to start to understand that people are going to people are going to how can I say it? Just because you are allied with specific groups doesn't mean that those specific groups are going to be allied with you. Now, Anna Kasparian said something very hypocritical on her channel. Is she was like, I think she was talking about homelessness or she was talking about something. And then she was like, well, except, there was something I think she was saying about race. And then she was like, well, it's okay, if you're a minority and you say this, but if you're, white and you say this, it's not okay. And I think that that was just really painting this issue with a broad brush. Race is a very complex topic. There is nuances in it. It's not so clear cut. And so Black people, not only Black people, but also minorities, but specifically Black people, we understand, just as Black people and Jewish people understand, we understand micro invalidations, we understand micro aggressions, we understand micro insults. And I think what Mondale Robinson is experiencing at TYT is just a revelation that his ideology is not consistent with the ideology of TYT. Doesn't mean that his ideology is incorrect. It just means that these two groups or these persons don't believe in the same thing. And what can you really expect? I think it's time now in the United States. This is the time, and this is what I've been pointing to. It's time for Black Americans to really narrow down their issues, their political issues, and to be consistent on how to Well, to narrow down our political issues, that's one, right? To narrow down like what is very important to us. But also number two is who is truly allied with our experiences and uh, our causes. So for example, lately, and listen, ladies and gentlemen, when I say this, I am going to issue a disclaimer. I will reiterate that I in no way co-sign or uh, am on board with the war that is happening within the Middle East in Gaza. I am anti-war. I can't say that enough. But we have seen an inconsistency within the United States where Black Americans have threw themselves under the bus by supporting Palestinians. Now, I'm not saying that we're not supposed to speak out against war and people that are unjustly losing their lives in war. Yeah, we are supposed to speak out against that. But what we have seen is that there has been Black Americans that have actually took it to another level, right? And have uh, thrown themselves under the bus by accepting the ideology of the Palestinian people, which doesn't really quite fit with the movement of the Black Lives Matter movement. It doesn't quite fit with the civil rights movement. It doesn't fit with the ideology of MLK or Malcolm X. And so, in consideration of that, what we have seen, ladies and gentlemen, is that a lot of Black people have thrown themselves under the bus by adopting this ideology that is very inconsistent with their entire being. And what has happened? They have lost their jobs. They have lost their, they have been thrown. So of course they've been thrown under the bus, but they have lost their job. They've lost employment. They have been unable to get employment elsewhere. They've been canceled. And I want to say this, and I haven't done enough research on this, and I'm starting to really research these issues. But this is my belief. My belief is that the Black experience is more aligned with the Jewish experience. To reiterate, as I said in a couple videos ago, Blacks have gone through the transatlantic slave trade, which was a period of persecution. There was lynching during this period. There was oppression. There was forced labor during this uh, difficult period. If Blacks decided that they didn't want to work for free, if they tried to escape the plantation, they were unalived. This is similar to what Jewish people experienced in Germany, is that they were in they were actually all rounded up and placed in these camps, unfortunately. And while they were placed there, if they decided that they wanted to escape or wanted to leave, they were unalived. Excuse me. And so we can see that our experiences are more aligned with the Jewish people's experience and what they've gone through in history. They suffered a horrific Holocaust. We went through our descendants, excuse me, our ancestors went through the transatlantic slave trade. Their ancestors went through the Holocaust. Now, there is an argument that the Black experience is quite similar to Palestinians because, there is kind of like an occupation within the United States. Blacks are being occupied within the United States. But I think what's different is that Black Americans were brought to the United States, of course, against their will, against their volition, to work in the um, to work for the dominant society and to build up the United States as what we see today. Whereas this was different, right? Because with the Palestinians, they weren't actually trafficked to Gaza. They weren't trafficked to the West Bank, and they didn't have to build, and they weren't forced into labor and forced to build uh, Palestine. They weren't forced to build Gaza. So, in essence, I believe that our experience is really, really similar to the Jewish people. And with that in mind, I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we are doing is we are allowing people to shift our thoughts and to shape our opinions about who our true allies are. The Jewish people have always stood next to Black Americans. Now, are there Jewish people on the far right? Yes, there are. Yes, there are. And they have the right to have that ideology. But in essence, you have not seen Jewish people coming down upon Black Americans in the way that we have seen MAGA do in the United States. Now, are there some Jewish people that are aligned with MAGA? Yes. But in essence, Jewish people are not going to get behind the persecution of Black people, not collectively. And I am I believe that they would actually now I'm not talking about those that are working in the CIA. I'm not talking about those that are working in the FBI. We understand that there is a different ideology there, right? I'm talking about when we are speaking about grassroots or excuse me, grassroots organizations, when we are speaking about just the political ideology of the Jewish people, they are really, in my personal opinion, not going to get on board with that kind of persecution against Blacks collectively. And so I was reading. There was a book that I was reading earlier, and there was something that I took out of this book that I just want to say. So this was during the time that I think it was after the slavery era. I think it was probably during the period of Jim Crow, earlier in Jim Crow, or probably during Reconstruction. But there was a Jewish merchant in Summit, Mississippi, and what he did was he leased a property to a group of Black people, right? And what happened was members of the dominant society came and they burned down 27 of those houses. So there were 20, I think there were tenants living in 27 houses. Dominant society came and burned those down and were threatening this Jewish merchant. And so this intimidation caused the merchant to actually leave Summit, Mississippi. And but I bring that up because the reason for my bringing that up is to show you that even as far back as in that period, that there's always been kind of like an understanding and an allegiance with the Jewish people and Black Americans. And there's something, I mean, I want to do some more reading. I will be first to say that I am not well educated on Jewish studies. I'm not well educated on history. I'm not a historian by any means. I'm learning about this just as maybe you may be learning. But another interesting fact that I read earlier today was that Jewish people were thought to have distinguishing Black features. And this was a reason for their persecution, is because the dominant society looked at them as looking, you know, looking in terms of features, facial features, as looking as if they were Black. And so, of course, we know that their skin color is not Black, but it was thought that the features that they had were similar to the features that Black people have. And so we can see how, the persecution that Jewish people experienced in time is quite similar to the persecution that Black people experienced in time. And I would even go so far as to say, so remember Whoopi Goldberg? I'm going to pivot to this. Remember when Whoopi Goldberg was on The View and she had she had a perception, an opinion about who she believed the Jewish people were. She felt that they were not a race. And so there was an argument that Jewish people were a race and that they weren't white. And so I think this is another distinguishing feature that we have here, is that Jewish people don't really identify, not all, now some may do, but some don't. They don't identify as being part of the dominant society. And I think it's because of that element of persecution that they have experienced and have received by the dominant society. And so this is markedly different than how some of the folks in the Middle East identify themselves as. For example, Palestinians, they do identify themselves as being white, and they are more aligned with the dominant society. So again, like when I was in the Republic of Ireland, most of the those who were, how can I say this? When I was in the Republic of Ireland, most Muslims would identify as being white and not necessarily Muslims. Now, that's not all, but this is some, right? And so I'm saying that to say that when we are looking at persecution, it's important, when we are trying to ally ourselves, it's important to look and to see who has experienced a similar level of persecution as us, right? And possibly to ally ourselves with those who can understand our persecution, because not everybody is going to understand our persecution and what we've gone through. Trust me, I know. I was in the Republic of Ireland. I'm living abroad, and some people just don't understand Black people being persecuted in the United States. They just don't understand. They just can't see it. Like they look at you as if they interpret your story as if it is really just a manufactured story of the Black experience. And some people just don't understand it. And so what I think is important, ladies and gentlemen, is really to reiterate, is for us to really start to learn more about people and to really connect ourselves with those people that have, that have been persecuted. And let's go even deeper. So we understand that this is not all. So like, I'm not giving a monolithic argument. I'm not painting every person with a broad brush, but we know that a lot of Jewish people, their hair is quite now this, again, and I need to reiterate, not all, right? But some Jewish people within within Israel and some abroad, and sometimes their hair is kind of coily and curly, and some, some think that that is like a distinguishing feature that is connected to Blacks as well. And when I think about this really deeply, I remember that I remember that I was being told by, I'm not going to say who, but I was being told by someone that, like, I wasn't, a person that was, uh, so I was being told by a person that, you know, there were certain features within a person that makes them attractive, such as light eye colors, straight hair. So, like, not my kind of hair, but like straight hair and light skin color. And that is what I was being told makes a person attractive. And this was coming from somebody that was Palestinian. Now, that is not to say that all Palestinians think that way. But there has been a lot of Black people that have lost their jobs because they have been in allegiance and supporting the Palestinian cause. And none of these groups have advocated for them, have come to their defense, have supported them. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's just very important for us to really take a step back. Right now is going to be a difficult 4 years in the United States. We're already seeing this starting to unfold. There was, I can't, well, could I? Okay, yeah. So there was a picture that US President Donald Trump took with Daniel Penny. Now, a picture says 1,000 words, right? We are already starting to see a shift, or I won't even say a shift because that shift is already starting to happen, but what we're starting to see is bonds being solidified, and we need to solidify our bonds as well. Now, the dominant society is solidifying their bonds, and they're all coming together, and they are coming together under this MAGA umbrella. And under this MAGA umbrella, there is an ideology, and there is a large percentage. Now, I'm not saying all, so this is a disclaimer. I'm not saying all, but there is a percentage of those under MAGA who do not like Blacks and do not like Jewish people. This is not fear mongering. This is not an incitement to hate. This is really just reality. It is the truth. And I just think now it's time that we take a step back and we realize exactly who has consistently been there for us and have tried to support us and have tried to understand our causes and have tried to understand our persecution. And when we look back in history, we can always see someone from the Jewish community really supporting us, really standing next to us, really trying to help us in our causes, really trying to ensure that we somehow make it out of our persecution. And I understand that being in support of the Jewish people right now is not popular. It's not a popular position to take. But ladies and gentlemen, you have to ask yourself is if you are going with a cause because everyone else is, are you supporting a cause because the crowd is doing it? Now, I read a lot on crowd psychology. So if a really interesting book that I would recommend that you read is The Crowd by Gustave Le Bon, which is a book about crowd psychology. It talks about ostracism, isolation, how the in-group often dominates, and how the out-group suffers because of that. It's really an important book that I think that we should be reading. And I think that once you really understand crowd psychology, you begin to understand why everybody is going with a movement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not to say that, okay, the people that are in support of one cause is not in support of it because they don't want to see people losing their lives abroad. No, I'm a person that I strongly stand against war because of the harm that it does to people. But when you, and there is no caveat to that, that is just a period to that. Nonetheless, what I think it's important now is because people are starting to solidify their bonds with each other. I think it's only it only makes sense for us to do the same. And the way or how we're trying to solidify our personal bonds is not getting us anywhere. Think about it. We didn't, although our politician now, it's important to say that yes, our politicians didn't act on our demands during, and so I wasn't in the United States, but I was part, ideologically so, a part of the Black Americans in the United States who believed that the United States should give reparations for that harm to the descendants of slaves, for that harm that happened in the past. And so we understand that our elected officials didn't act on that, um, you know, that request, right? They didn't act on that policy position. And because they didn't act on that policy position, Black people really didn't turn out to vote, right? And so Trump is, and this is something that we need to start to realize as well, is that there are going to be some groups that are going to, the dominant society is very good at getting you to support a position that will later get you in trouble. I've been doing research on this for quite some time. And so, like, I haven't published research on this, but I've been really observing how this happens by listening to some Twitter spaces. Although I don't have Twitter, I can kind of, there's people that actually upload their Twitter spaces to YouTube. And so I listen to those Twitter spaces. And I see, or excuse me, I can hear that the dominant society is trying to get Black Americans to oftentimes go against Jewish people, wrongfully so. And they're doing that so later, there can be a launch of a claim against Black people, not because they are wanting to be in allegiance with Black people. And so I would advise you, if you were in those groups, to not take that position. If you're not going to take a position at all, that's fine, but don't. The dominant society is trying to get you to go against Jewish people. Don't ever take that position. That is a recipe for disaster. They are trying to set you up so that all of the persecution and the hate can fall back on you. Moving forward, I think, again, same thing with the dominant society and the MAGA movement, right? There has been Black people who have aligned themselves with the MAGA movement disgracefully. And how can you align yourself with a movement that is antithetical to who you are and antithetical to uplifting and not only uplifting you as a person, as a group, but actually showing, so uplifting you, one, as a person and a group, and two, uh, equalizing it, right? And this is a movement that does not uplift the MAGA movement. So let me be clear, the MAGA movement does not see, in my personal opinion, now I'm entitled to my personal opinion, the MAGA movement does not see Black Americans as equal, and nor do they want equality for Black Americans. We see that in uh, President Donald Trump's photo op with Daniel Penny. Now, if you really thought and cared about Black life, you wouldn't be taking a photo op with a person who is actually unalived a Black man in public space. This is what we have seen, ladies and gentlemen. What we're doing is we're seeing like we're seeing a reinvention of what we have seen during the slavery era or during this Jim Crow period. Do you remember when there was the times where like groups would get together and they would actually, there would be like a lynching of a Black person. That Black person is hanging from the tree, and groups within the dominant society would take a photo, like the Black person is in the background hanging from the tree, and you have the dominant society actually smiling and taking a photo. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the same thing that's happening now. You have that photo was in the past. That photo is telling us, one, it's a photo to activate our fear, right? Because it's a form of intimidation and persecution, and it's like, oh my God, like, and then for the person who unalived or lynched that Black man, it's kind of like a trophy. And so we can kind of see how this is the same thing with Donald Trump taking a photo op with Daniel Penny. Like, he is this person in the dominant society that has won this trophy of unaliving a Black person in public space, which is, again, to reiterate, quite similar to the lynchings happening back in the day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all repeating itself. Same script, different cast. Same script, different cast. We really need to circle our wagons, and we need to go back to who we once were and really build an allegiance with our true allies, and really build a coalition with people that really truly support us and truly get us and truly want the best for us and not want to harm us, not want to see us fail. It's something that I think that we need to start to do. Now, as an aside, there have been some far right people that have been responding to my, and again, I think that these far right accounts are connected to intelligence agencies, because again, you can't complain against these you can't complain against these far right actors who are responding to like some of my videos. You can't complain against like these cyber hackers, these cyber criminals, because once you make a complaint, your complaint is disregarded. So that leads me to believe that these cyber criminals are doing so at the have imprimatur to actually hack into my accounts and to like sometimes send me intimidating messages, and to recently I received some like far right messages that were on one of the YouTube videos that I did about Kyle Rittenhouse, Daniel Penny, and unfortunately the other messages, or excuse me, the other like posts that were on that video are not showing. And I even tried to send a post myself by like actually posting from a second Gmail that I have, and when I tried to do that, like that message wasn't showing up. So the only messages that are showing up on my account were these far right ideology messages. So what I did was I just deleted them, because if you're not going to be consistent with showing all the messages, then you're not going to show any. I'm just not going to let any appear. So again, I uploaded that video, and there were some responses that were like talking about how they believe that the people that I was talking about was in the right for what they did. And so those messages were present, right? But my response to those messages and other responses to those messages are not present. So it'll show that I have a response, but for some reason, it's not showing. And so, again, to reiterate, what I did was I tried to send a response from another Gmail account that I have, and that response wasn't showing. I even went into the studio to see if like there was moderation to those messages, and there wasn't any moderation. So this lets me know that the other comments are being suppressed and only the far right comments are being able to be shown. And this is, I think this is a person named Maurice O'Sullivan, who is actually connected to the Republic of Ireland and some intelligence agencies in the Republic of Ireland and the United States. I believe that like these people are all together connected, who is actually trying to suppress my content. But the show will go on, and I will continue to fight the good fight and continue to upload videos and continue to talk about what's very important. With that being said, I hope that you have a good evening. I hope that you find the information in this video helpful. If you have any questions, don't forget to reach out to me, or don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am going to respond to any question that seems to be available that I can see. And with that, I hope that you have a good night. Till next time, bye bye.